each opportunity, I would like to introduce myself furthermore, which I didn't quite well beforehand. And I would like to talk about Rotary Global Scholar, and then move on to Johnson School of Advanced International Studies, and then I'll wrap up my speech today with my studies during the first year in the U.S. and future plans for Rotary and as a student. So I want to start with my brief kind of resume education. So now I'm pursuing my master's degree in international relations and international economics, and I think I will successfully finish my degree in next May next year. So hopefully I'll be around in this town 1 year more with you, and at the Johns Hopkins School of Advanced International Studies in Washington, DC. And I'm focusing on conflict management, international conflict management. And back in South Korea, during undergraduate years, I studied English literature as well as international trade as my double major, quite interdisciplinary, at Donguk University in Seoul, South Korea. Graduate my cum laude. So, even though I came straight from my undergraduate school to graduate school, I have some experience, professional experience in between. So, more importantly, I served for the Korean Army for 2 years and ended up as a sergeant. Quite fast, and when it comes to promotion in the Korean Army, so it's kind of weird. And especially, I was assigned to the Korean Army Special Operations Forces, and I functioned as an English translator. So I did a lot of office work, but I did some special force things such as parachute jumping from the airplane, or also known as C-130, or also known as Hercules airlifting, and 4 times, just 4 times, no more. So, which is mandatory. And right after I finished my undergraduate, and right before I came here in Washington, D.C., I worked for the Korea Development Institute, and especially its affiliated graduate school, School of Public Policy, and function as an assistant manager of public relations. And that's the reason why I could comment on the social network services that our Rotary Fort Myer Club is now considering. And in the undergraduate years, I was the editor-in-chief in the campus English newspaper for 2.5 years, and it was really time well spent. And come to think of it, I was a reporter, and at some point I was asked to follow Rotarians who visited our alma mater, the campus. So at the time, I didn't know what Rotarians are, who they exactly are. I just followed too many pictures of them, and it turned out that it's like karma that I came here as a future prospective Rotarian. I hope so. And so they are from the England, and because my school alma mater is founded by Buddhists, so they had some experience to get the sense of what Korean Buddhism is like, and they also participated in classes. For example, my major English literature, because they are from England, they were well acquainted with the English literature, so it was a good time, and that was my first encounter with Rotarians. So I want to move on to the topic of Rotary Global Scholar, which I am proudly. So I think this is the successor form of the former famous scholarship provided by the Rotary International, which is known as Ambassador of Scholarship, which ended in 2007, I guess. And so basic idea and qualification of the scholarship is to fulfill one of the following areas of focus, and I belong to the first category of peace, and the rest of the areas covers all spheres of humanitarian work we are focusing on. So disease, water, health, education, and economy. So last year, February and March, I was accepted to several graduate school in the US. So I was happy on the one hand, but on the other side, I was desperate for money to leave for the US. So I Googled and searched a lot of foundations, and I bump into the information on Rotary, but I had no connection to Rotary, so I contacted the local Rotary club, and they said, you have no connection to the Rotary club. So what they asked me to do is to contact my alma mater school first and get a recommendation from the school. It's the process they asked me to do. So I rushed to the school, which I graduated a month or 2 months ago, and I followed the procedure. So in the first round, I submitted application to the school, and I got shortlisted. And for the second round, I had an interview with the university president, but I actually had the interview with vice president, and we had a good conversation, and I got to move on to the last round and had an interview with the donor who really provided the money for the global grant assigned to me, and we had a good conversation. And to come to think of it, I think to be the global grant scholar, I think they put emphasis on three biggest criteria. Number one is to fulfill one of the areas of focus, and I was fulfilling that criteria. And number two is English skills, and the last one, and last but not least, is the commitment to the Rotary community during and even after the scholarship period. So I promised to my donor that I will be doing a good job, and I think I'm good. Am I? But, yeah. So I just want to give you more information on Korean Rotary community. So let's pull up the exact numbers. So there are in total 18 districts in South Korea and 1589 clubs in South Korea in total. It's quite many. I think it's ranked the fourth in the world after the US and Japan. And especially I am belong to the Rotary District 3650, which harbors 96 clubs. And I belong also to Namdaemun Club in Seoul. And the district itself has 3,000 members. And just in case those who are interested in gender ratio, they have 400 women. I think they should push harder to make the equality. And on the right side, there is a picture of my donor and me. And the article says that in 2014, the district selected 2 candidates for the scholarship. So one is me, and the other one is now pursuing his PhD degree in Hawaiian State University. So to take advantage of this opportunity, I want to introduce more about my donor. So his name is Dr. Jeon Sun Pyo, and he's quite prominent figure in South Korea because of his lifelong dedication to free, at the time, poor South Korean, free of the infectious insects, flies, and especially mouse, so which eats people's food. So, and his lifelong effort has been consummated with the establishment of his company, corporation, Sesco, and where he is now a CEO. And he's also recognized as the Rotary member of AKS, which stands for Art Club Society, because he donated nearly $300,000 so far. And last year he received the highest honor of Rotary International above Self Award. Additionally, he's established Small Operation Korea, and he's leading small operation in developing countries, which is to help children get surgery who are suffering from the cleft lip and cleft palate, to have the big smile on their face. We'll move on to my activities. So from time to time, I take pictures of our club, and I report out back to South Korea. And this is the article I wrote in Korean to the publication, monthly publication, circulating among Seoul Rotary clubs. So what I said is like how good our Fort Myer club is and how welcome us. And of course, you can see the picture with our Mr. President Daniel Burkett and Andrea at the Nationals baseball park, which we went for at the game, the very game representing the Poly Plus campaign at the time last summer.
Are they keeping track of your academic progress? Send them a transcript. I'm asking that because we are about to start sponsoring a high school kid in going to college.
It's a good question, and I'm willing to provide my academic transcript back to either this club or my Korean club, but I don't think it's mandatory.
Okay.
We don't need it.
Just believe they are doing
Especially if
it
you're
well.
right in Korea, right.
So my next topic, and we are getting towards the end already. My next topic is about my school, Johns Hopkins School of Advanced Intelligence Studies, also known as SCI. The reason why I pull up this portion is that this school is quite prominent in Washington, D.C., and I hope this institution will be potential institution for future global scholars like me that your clubs will harbor in the future. So it's always good to know what's happening in the town just across the river. At the outset, it was not JHU SCI, it was just SCI as an independent and unaffiliated organization, educational institution. And it was founded in 1943 by Christian A. Herter, a former U.S. congressman, and Paul H. Nietzsche, who was a former U.S. diplomat. And they met at the Georgetown in a cafe, and they talked about their concerns over the aftermath of the Second World War, because they're at the point of time the war is getting towards the end, and they were expecting returning veterans who are now interested in international affairs, different from back in the day, isolationism prevalent in the U.S. So they were very much concerned about building that institution in Washington, D.C., nowhere else. And they knew the fact that they already have a good institution right across the river, Georgetown, but they thought it's, to quote what they say, is too small, it's too conservative, and it's too Catholic oriented. I'm not trying to offend it, it's just what they said. So they pursued their way, but to just aside the story, there's an interesting controversial drainage from Fletcher at the time. So just to introduce the picture on the top left is a picture of Christian A. Herter. On the right side is Paul Nietzsche, and at the bottom his name is Hoskins, and he's the founding dean of Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy. But he conquered the idea of those two guys, so he kind of defected to SCI in DC with his good collection of library, many books. So he was kind of controversial, and because of the reason, the relation between those two institutions was quite kind of brittle at that point. And so, but as an independent institution, it suffered from financial fundings. So at some point, they had no choice but to be affiliated with a good university or to get the good flow of financial fundings. Especially Carnegie Endowment Foundation recommended SCI to get the affiliation. In that case, they promised that they will give the SCI $60,000 at the time. So they did it, and they started shopping around Harvard, Princeton, Yale, and even University of Pennsylvania. And it turned out that, for example, Harvard didn't want to divert their assets to Washington, D.C. And it turned out that Johns Hopkins was very responsive because it's close by when it comes to the locale. It's Baltimore, just 2 hours plus from here. So it was a win-win game because from the perspective of Johns Hopkins, they kind of suffered from the stock market crash in 1929, which boded ill for the International Affairs program at the Johns Hopkins. So it worked as a breakthrough to reinvigorate their program. So now they merged together and ended up as JHU SCI. So for the first time, they was situated along the Florida Avenue, and the building they harbored was known as Gunston Hall, which was originally girls' school. It was kind of rickety, and literally the bricks and the walls were trembling. So they moved to the current situation along Massachusetts Avenue, Embassy Road in 1963, and they started expanding their campus abroad. So during the 1950s, SAIS established centers in Burma, Indonesia, and Italy. At the time, the U.S. was very much interested in starting project or setting education institution in Asia. So the Burma was a focal point, but it turned out that it was not an easy task because there was a turnover of regime and students just went out on the street to protest. So even though the US government and CIA was willing to give funding to SAIS, they just closed, and as of now they have two abroad campus, Bologna Center and Nanjing Center, as well as Washington DC campus. So the biggest difference SAIS has from other institutions is that most professors have practitioner background in the political realm, as well as but now professors from purely scholarly background is on the increase to make the balance. And when it comes to programs, they include regional studies. Now, like my colleague pursue Korean studies and economics, diplomatic history, and international relations. So we had many good international relations schools in this town and around this town, starting from Georgetown, Johns Hopkins, Harvard, Princeton, Columbia, Tufts, George Washington, American University in Tallytown. So, but all those schools had commonly suffered from identity problem. On the one hand, there is a purely educational, research-oriented schools in which master's degree students pursue PhD program afterwards. And on the other hand, there's a very job-oriented, job-finding, job-seeking oriented institutions like medical school, law school, MBA. So our schools are originally trying to tread the midway in between. So what they argue is to train generalists because nowadays international affairs require cross-boundary thinking, legal, historical, diplomatic, cultural, so covers all the realm. So for last but not least, I want to make an argument that students studying at those kind of IR international relations schools are more committed, genuinely committed to the public service and humanitarian works than motivations that pursue medical or MBA law school degrees. And as the Peace Corps advertisement appeals to students, there are a good amount of students that has the same mindset of the toughest job you'll ever love. So I'm happy to say that Rotary Club do support those kind of students and the major international relations. I think it's a way to go for Rotary clubs. To wrap up my today's speech, I prepared what I studied during the first year and my future plans both in short term and long term. So I think it's quite intuitive just list of my classes I took. So for the first semester, I took comparative national system, microeconomics, major ideas in modern political economy, and principles and practices of conflict management, which was taught by the Hopman we hosted a few weeks ago. And in the very last semester, I took theories of international relations, macroeconomics, politics and literature, and international bargaining and negotiation. So you can get the sense of how interdisciplinary they are. So I'm taking and many English classes as well. And as a graduate student, I did also research on, so let me just read, secession movement patterns in Moldova and Ukraine upon independence, the preventive diplomacy of the HCCNA, which stands for High Commissioner on National Minority in the conflict between Ukraine and Crimea, and the negotiation in the first North Korean nuclear crisis. And I also did small research on conflicts between Israel and Palestine, for Gaza district, Egypt and Israel at the Camp David, the U.S. and Panama over Panama Canal, Britain and Argentina over Falkland, the U.S. and Soviet over partial nuclear test ban negotiation during the Cold War era, and post-Yugoslavia region, which is a headache to those who pursue this kind of studies, a headache. So this is the very last slide. I thank you for bearing with me. And my short-term plan is to intern. I'll be interning at the Stevenson Center, which is a think tank in Washington, D.C. starting from tomorrow. And I'll be focusing on peacekeeping operations. I'm happy to tell you that this is also in line with the humanitarian work that we pursue, and maybe I can bring up interesting topic afterwards. And I'm planning to bring more speakers to the club, either from my Johns Hopkins site or from the center, the think tank. And I recommended to make excursions to other local Rotary clubs, and I have to figure out with Mr. President. In my long-term plan, I sometimes ask questions like, are you going to stay after your master's degree or just going back to South Korea? My short-term answer is I will stay as long as possible if I can get a job here. But my longer answer will be like, I am dedicated to the current reunification issue, which my generation, me and my colleagues sitting over there, have to address for the benefit of the world, I think. Thank you for listening.
It's too early to leave. Let's have some questions.
Sangyoung, you already know this, but just for the purpose of the club, I'll point out you need to study the German experience of reunification. North Korea has been studying that ever since it happened because they want to look at what's going to cost. But you might also want to look at the Balkan experience because they did unify, but they are still having to cooperate with each other. So as an interim, before unification, the Balkan relationships might be a sort of interim stage through which it might go through. So that's something I think there's a lot of scholarship on the German reunification we should have looked at and learned from.
I appreciate your advice.
Sangyoung, you had something up there about small research and on various topics, and I guess question number one is, what did you mean by that? A paper using secondary sources or something like that? What did it mean?
You mean small research?
Yes.
So by small research, I mean just like take-home exam, the topics of take-home exam, or just as a homework, not a big research paper, like 10 pages long. That's the fuzzy distinction I made.
Are you expected as part of your program to engage in major research using primary sources or
What do you mean by primary sources?
something relating to the thing itself rather than what somebody said about the thing? Newspaper item saying, here's the speech that was given by the premier of so-and-so.
So we basically do a library research. That's what I get information, but I'm willing to have you research.
Can I add on to that question? So so at SAIS, we do not require students to write a thesis, but we have to go through the language exam. We have to take 4 econ classes, and we also have to finish a capstone, which is either oral examination or writing a thesis. So it really depends on like what path you choose. But I believe that Sangyoung or like some other students who are concentrating on more qualitative concentrations, they are more likely to write a thesis. And for students who are also thinking of pursuing a PhD, they also have to do write a thesis using the primary sources. So that is how it works at SAIS. If that has answered your question.
Oh yeah. Well, one good question is there's another not so good question. Looking backward, on the basis of half your academic experience here, did you make the right choice going to SAIS? Did you make a super duper choice or a pretty good choice, or are you getting the education that you really wanted to get coming here as opposed to some other alternative place?
Yes, I am. Yes, I am getting the proper education which I really wanted, and especially the location is Washington D.C. and it has a lot, and it has a bunch of opportunities. And yeah, I'm quite happy with the education that I'm receiving now.
How would you compare the differences between university training in Korea and university training in the United States? Are they very similar, or are the methods very different?
It's a very good question, and also a big question that I have to mull over. But maybe the conspicuous difference is that in the U.S. it's more self-driven, and if you are self-driven enough, there are many people that are trying to help you out with many resources. And in South Korea, it's like to follow what the professor said. And the very recent recognition that I got is that when it comes to the U.S. classroom, professors stay until all the students go out. But when it comes to the South Korean classroom, professors go out first, and students like sometimes clean the blackboard or something. So I think there are ups and downs in both systems, but when it comes to the US, it's like the professor is more dedicated and coming to the students. Yeah, that's what I felt so far. Maybe somebody can correct me if I'm wrong.
That'll be you.
Would you agree with that?
Yes, partially agree, partially not, because I mean, academic circle is changing fast in South Korea as well. So young professors are more dedicated to their job, and they also have to accomplish what they're expected to do. For example, they're expected to fulfill the requirements for the university or college to accomplish a certain degree of globalization, because we are required to do so in South Korea, as well as they have to do their own academic research, and they're more dedicated to the teaching students these days. So I wouldn't flatly say that like South Korean academic circle is not as dedicated to their students as the American ones, but in general I would definitely agree with Sangyoung. And the other thing that I would like to mention is that for me, I have compared syllabi of South Korean Graduate School of International Studies and SAIS and that of SAIS, and realized that for econ classes and quantitative reasoning classes, SAIS or American schools tend to be more practical, whereas for qualitative classes like political science classes, it's
That's who you want to talk to? About happy
yeah.
Or his dad.
Yeah, sorry. It's more like so school requires you to read more classics like classical political theory, political philosophy, and things like that. So I think it gives American schools tend to give you tends to require you to think more and elaborate more on the fundamental issues more so than Korean schools do. But I might be a little biased because I didn't really study international relations in Korea. I studied business, so I could be a little biased. So yeah, that's how I see it.